You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let's start. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the B2B thematic webinar series, December 2025. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone because we know people are joining from everywhere in the world. My name is Pradeep Nayak, and I'm at the University of Waterloo. I also represent the B2B Global Partnership for Building Strong Small-Scale Fisheries Communities. Um, I'm going to do a few rounds of introduction before we get to hear our speaker today. Just as a introduction to the B2B Global Partnership, which is a transdisciplinary research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 members from Africa, Asia, and globally. That also includes Canada. The goal of the global partnership is to support small scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability. And the way we understand and work on vulnerability viability is not just to represent the economic aspect of it or the income aspect of it, but also to include the political, the cultural, the environmental, and all other aspects of human life. We also work not only the transitions from vulnerability towards viability by these small scale fisheries communities. Our focus is equally on how can very viable communities stay viable and not revert back towards vulnerability. Our focus is on co-creation and co-production of knowledge that is essential for this transition between vulnerability and viability. We are working on building database and information systems, developing multi-level, multifaceted capacity, synthesizing and integrating knowledge that can inform the governance and policy around small-scale fisheries. And of course, a big way we engage ourselves in knowledge mobilization across all scales. The B2B Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small scale fisheries and engage collaboratively with small scale fisher communities around the world and other key civil society, NGO, government, and university partners to enhance small scale fisheries viability. We are conducting transdisciplinary, community engaged, and policy driven research in 6 countries in Asia that includes Bangladesh, uh, uh, Bangladesh, um, uh, Thailand, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, and 6 countries in Africa that includes Ghana, Malawi, Nigeria, Senegal, South Africa, and Tanzania. In doing so, the V2B Global Partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing global change impacts on small scale fisheries. The B2B thematic webinar uh, series, which for which we have gathered here today, uh, is an initiative of the B2B Global Partnership to facilitate and generate high-level discussions on vulnerability and viability themes and topics within the context of small-scale fisheries. The B2B thematic webinar series takes place on the last Friday of every month, and it will continue to be so during the 2026. The series is available internationally through live streaming on YouTube, details regarding which you can find on our website, which is www.b2bglobalpartnership.org. Today's webinar is the 12th in the series of B2B thematic webinars planned for the year 2025 and 60th since the uh, January 2021 when we started this series. And it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Joel Das as our distinguished speaker today. Dr. Joel Das is a faculty member in the Institute of Marine Sciences at the University of Chittagong in Bangladesh. He has a PhD in geography from the University of Bremen in Germany and a master's in aquaculture, Institute of Marine Sciences, Chittagong University. Trained in marine science, Dr. Das works across disciplines to examine how people interact with marine and coastal environments. His research focuses on facilitating dialogue between ocean ecosystems and the coastal populations that depend on these resources. Specifically, he pays attention to the social ecological processes related to blue economy, blue growth, and resource governance. Dr. Das investigates the use, management, and stewardship of marine and coastal resources, particularly among small-scale users. His work emphasizes the equitable transitions, community resilience, and active participation to promote sustainable management of marine and coastal areas, specifically focusing on Bangladesh. Dr. Das has been involved in the work of B2B Global Partnership and continues to be a close collaborator for many of our activities, including the ongoing initiative on blue carbon. It is my honor to invite Dr. Joel Das to deliver today's talk for the B2B thematic webinar series December 2026. His talk will be titled as Blue Transitions in the Crowded Coast of Bangladesh. Thank you very much, Joel, for making time, and the floor is yours now.
Thanks so much, Pratik, and thanks to V2B for inviting me. It's a privilege to share my research and knowledge with the global researchers, even the interested peoples in YouTube and everything. So I say good evening from Chittagong. That's Bangladesh, and good morning and good day to all over the world who are joining and watching the webinar. So I'm sharing my screen before starting my talk. I think this one. Okay, hope you can see me and I'm audible enough, right? Okay, so my name is Joel Das, and I'm an associate professor at the Institute of Marine Sciences in the University of Chittagong, Bangladesh. So I work on the coastal management, marine governance, and sustainable resource management in the coast of Bangladesh. So this means that today I will deliver a talk on blue transitions on the crowded coast of Bangladesh. So this talk is basically from my doctoral research and previous experience and ongoing researches. So I will try to cover some of the coastal areas where we do our work. And it's my pleasure to share my thoughts with you today. So basically, the central concepts of this webinar is blue economy. That's the sustainable use of ocean resources for economic growth, for improving the livelihoods, and also the ecosystem health. Interchangeably, sometimes we used as a blue growth or ocean economy or marine economy. So it's an agenda actually frames the oceans as a new economic frontier, which actually invites a lot of international donors or international investors in developing countries. So, and it has some wide opportunities to contribute to the sustainable development goals, and its vision also aims to contribute in the sustainable development goals, and it widens the scope of the regional and development and maritime policy build up among the neighboring states or even the coastal states, which actually helps to achieve the overall development goals of the globe. So, and another central concept of this talk is the equity. That's we call the ocean equity. So sometimes a lot of researchers divided it based on their research, but so far the inclusive one is like 6 types of equity has been discussed in the global scholarship. So this equity actually talks about the fairness, the question of fairness and perspectives by ensuring the historical inequities or inequalities or even the injustices actually raises the questions that who truly benefits from this development, this so-called development. And it's not a one-dimensional concept, the equity. It spans across various scales, various types. Each type addresses the fairness and justice in ocean-based economies or ocean-based activities. So it has a crucial role in shaping how oceans resources are accessed, governed, and preserved, and also addressed barriers that prevent inclusive and just or equitable blue economy or blue transition. So now let's dive deeper into each type of equity. We can see that recognitional equity, individual or sorry for the background sound. Recognitional equity, it talks about individual or groups' rights, tenure, values, knowledge, and livelihoods. And procedural equity, it talks about ensuring inclusive participation in decision making through transparent, accountable governance. Distributional equity, it talks about the fair distribution of benefit and the burdens across groups, including our next generation. Management equity, it's involvement of the local people or local leadership, which actually contributes to the management initiatives. Environmental equity, quality of environment that actually benefit the health of ecology and health of human. And finally, the contextual equity, which is sorry, which is also very important that the ground reality of any country or any context that helps that shapes within the social system, economic system, political and conditions, and even the wealth, power dynamics, and the capabilities. So this altogether shapes the equity of ocean, the six types. And then some of the issues come within the blue economy concept or within the blue growth concept, like what is happening due to this development. Sorry, displacement is happening, disposition is happening, environmental degradation, livelihood impacts for smaller scale resource users, conflicts and marginalization, even the challenges for the governance mechanism. So these are already proved and evidenced in so many countries, and you can see some of the recent researches. They also found the conflicts between sectors, and within the sectors, there are so many conflicts between the actors even. So that's overall shape the concept of blue justice. This justice is that blue justice actually talks. It's a regulatory idea, which actually refers to the fair and inclusive distribution of marine resources, ensuring that smaller scale resource users or coastal marginal communities or groups have equal rights, opportunities, and benefits in this blue transition or in this blue economy or blue growth that also protect their cultural heritage and livelihoods. So, who are in the front actually, and the B2B project or even the global projects which deal with the smaller scale fishers. So they are the main competitor of this whole dilemma, like blue economy, blue growth, or everything. Within these transitions, actually, they stand in the front line, along with the coast of Bangladesh or even the coast of in the coastal states. Millions of people depend directly or indirectly on a smaller scale fishing for their livelihoods, food security, and cultural identity. At the same time, these fishers are actually increasingly becoming the competitors with these growth activities. Like they are the vulnerable ones and they are the weaker parties. So within the expanding of these blue parties, so some of the smaller scale resource users are facing this injustice things of blue, like blue injustice or blue justice, we can say. So as long as the coastal and marine spaces are reoriented with the industrial activities like fishing, port development, energy infrastructure, or even the conservation. So the problem is rising, like the traditional fishing grounds have been grabbed, or even the access to the resources are dispossessed by them. So they're the ocean actors of this whole growth. So we know that the small scale fisheries play a vital role and provision for the local economies, stewardship, even for the marine ecosystem even. So I argue that they're the passive victim of this whole blue transitions. They actually they do so within highly unequal power dynamics, like power relations. So understanding their position is very important. So this is one of the core concept of this whole talk. The term blue transition is actually referring here. I'm not separating it from the blue transformation even. So it's a strategic shift towards the and in the management of ocean resources or coastal resources toward a sustainable, equitable and resilient blue economy, and it emphasizes the transformation of maritime and aquatic sectors, including fisheries, aquaculture, tourism, and energy. So, so that the economic development aligns with the ecological sustainability, social justice, and community well-being. So, my findings from my research found that there are some issues like in one of my systematic literature review, I found that equity is undermined in the blue economy or blue growth initiatives. And it has been overlooked in discussions and addressed separately in the debates of ocean economies. It included in some international policies, but it is largely missing in the national level policy making. So that's the problem. Like that's the misconnection, or I can say the disconnection between the international commitment and the national level policy framing. As long as every coastal states are embracing blue economy. So I'm going to a particular real life case like in Bangladesh, that how blue economy, equity and justice are happening in Bangladesh. So Bangladesh embraced blue economy and included it in their national policies in around 2015. And they formed, this country formed Blue Economy Cell in 2017, and they have developed a lot of plans within the broader framework of blue economy, like perspective plan of Bangladesh, and also welcomed international funding. After the maritime boundary settlement with India and Myanmar, this actually the flow, the economic frontier, considering the economic frontier, has been increased, and it sees ocean as a development space. So a lot of sectors has been considered within the broader framework of blue economy, and before going to the granular level, like in the coastal sites, I want to share the national level research I have been I conducted. Like I tried to map the blue economic governance network in Bangladesh. And to do so, I used a method called participatory network mapping or NetMap. So we brought the experts from different blue economy stakeholder groups in an international conference session to exercise that blue economy governance network mapping. So here I used NetMap as a method for blue economy governance network mapping. It actually asks two questions. How do different expert groups perceive the roles and influence of blue economy actors? And what are the perceived links between the identified blue economy actors? So these questions are critical in understanding the complex relationships and power dynamics in the governance of the blue economy in Bangladesh. We actually categorize them in four broader groups, such as government in one table, NGOs in one table, academic in one table, and private sector and civil society in another table. So they generated some blue economy governance network map, how those look like in the next slide. So you can see that four types of perceived networks by four tables. That's shedding light on the different ways expert groups view their roles, relationships, and influences of those actors within the governance landscape. These findings, actually, you can see that yellow is the color of government, so dominating some of the net maps, and NGOs found that themselves within the network, and also you can see some of the networks are very central, and some are actually there are some um, scattered view of some of the net maps generated by them. So this gave us some results. You can see the size of the circle is actually the power. You can see in the right bottom, like less influential to most influential in their thought, and some irregular shape is the international donors who are actually funding in Bangladesh. So this actually gave us some of the clues. Like first one is that the decision making is very central. The power dynamics and external influences shaping that the government saw themselves in the center of the blue economy governance network. So it means that the decisions are mostly top down. So it raises the questions about the consideration of the last mile people, like small scale resource users. And in the second one, you can see that power dynamics and external influences are there. Like there are a lot of influential investors are investing in our country. So it means that the role of these external actors are shaping and influencing some of the policy and development. which you will see in the next few slides, maybe. So, and the final one is very frustrating, that the marginalization, exclusion of the smaller scale fishers, or you can say the coastal communities. So they're excluded mostly, largely from the governance process. This exclusion actually further exacerbates the vulnerabilities of these communities, preventing them from having a hard voice in the overall decision making, management, or of the resources they rely on from generations for their livelihood. So this is the picture of the national level. So now I'm going towards the coast, like to ground the previous argument. I turn to the coast of Bangladesh. You can see the coastline highly diverse, it from ecological point of view, from social point of view, and to capture the diversity, actually, I focus on three particular issues. Like one is in the southeastern side of the coast, and then one was in the middle or central side, and the last one is in the southwest side of the whole coast. Uh, it these three cases actually revealing some of the contrast and some of the commonalities, also mostly dominating by the stronger parties and creating more marginalization or pressure on small scale fisheries. So first case is the southeast coastal case. That's an island. That's an in connected island actually. So this is located in the coast, southeastern coast of Bangladesh, which is the center of several coastal mega projects. You can see the map. The map actually highlights the key areas where these projects are taking place, showcasing their proximity to local communities. You can see Matarbari coal-fired power plant, and then some other projects like economic zone, LNG terminals, and also deep sea ports, everything. So uh, 1/5 of this island has been taken in the sake of development activities, where the smaller scale fishers are mostly living in these islands. So uh, actually, there were some issues like displacement happened, dispossession also. A lot of people lost their livelihoods through fishing. Even the competition with the fishing ground, the navigation routes and everything are also, and there is a complaint about the erosion and also flooding, both cases, due to development of some of the channels and some of the embankment and dikes in this island. So this creates some of the economic benefits for the country, but as long as smaller scale resource users are residents and their voices are concerned, displacement, environmental degradation, loss of livelihood are also concerned. These are also adding layer to the marginalization of the smaller scale features in the southeast coast of Bangladesh. And then you can see there is a report which we co-authored, like Guardian of Mashkali. It says that the problems they're having, and in my other research, I used a political ecology framework. That's the lens actually I used to see the power relations, policies, and the access to the coastal spaces or coastal commons. So this political ecology lens shown that there are economic enclosure, political exclusion, ecological encroachment, and social entrenchment. All the four quarters are also having some of the examples in the field level. Then I'm going to the middle coast, like in the central point, where shipbreaking, and in the other side, ship recycling is a huge industry from long generation, like 40 years back. They have started this industry. So this one is established in an established industry, and you know that the shipping is also third one of the blue economy sectors decided by the researchers. So shipbreaking has also impact on smaller scale fisheries in multiple way, and those are deeply interconnected. Fishers reported that they are declining fish catches and reduced income linked to some of the water pollution and habitat degradation issues. These changes are actually accompanied by biodiversity loss, including some disappearance of some key fish species. Beyond environmental impacts, fishers also face a serious health risk from toxic waste and contaminated water. And land use change and dispossession have reduced access to coastal spaces for them, further marginalizing the fishing communities. So you can see one of the quotes statement from the one of the fishers, which is experienced that 10 to 15 to 20 years back we could catch baskets of fish in a single trip, but now we can merely manage fraction of that quantity. And it also extended their time in working hours, fuel cost. Uh, they need more fuel cost now. Income level sharply declined, and most affected groups belong to small scale fishers who have to depend on this manual labor for worrying or have low capacity engine boats. So this statement actually gave us the whole scenario of this sector, like having more pressures on the smaller scale fishers. So then I moved to the southwest coast, like where I picked up only one issues like the protection conservation initiatives. And you can see in the map that there is a marine reserve and four marine protected areas. That means total five marine protected areas have been declared in Bangladesh or under preparation to make some draft plan for them. And there are some OECM also within two marine protected areas. So that means that more conservation is coming. So that's actually framed around the IT target or even the 30-30 target. So uh, we know that that's for the sustainability and ecosystem protection, but they often place disproportionate burdens on small scale fishers. How? Because this protection is for the greater interest, but these fishers mostly are subsistence fishing, like for their family or very small scale. Even they take some debt and go for fishing as a livelihood. So this ban period for a particular time, there are some national ban period for hilsha and some other fishes, and also now coming about the marine protected areas or conservation. In terms of conservation, they are completely restricted sometimes to go in a certain place to do some fishing. So then they don't have enough diversified livelihoods because they have some generational activities of fishing. So it is quite impossible for them to switch suddenly to any other livelihood during ban period or if there is no fishing in particular areas. And they have some power dynamics, like they depend on some of the others or some of the other wholesalers actually. So there is a power relation as well. So if they don't have an easy way to escape from this cycle, I should say vicious cycle. And there are some illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing also happening, records in Bangladesh. So this all together, and even some of the lacking of conservation knowledge and their willingness to participate in the whole conservation initiatives also combinedly create some more pressures on them, and that don't have some enough compensation or ration during the ban period. This is the common complaint they have. Also about the legislation, like there are some poor law enforcement uh, complained by them. So that actually hampers the rights for the weaker parties like small scale fishers. So these conservation dynamics should have some of the spaces for these smaller scale fishers. So altogether, they are also marginalizing the historical historical marginalization is, I should say, enhancing or in some cases widen the inequity and injustice. And then there are some other activities like blue carbon within the broader framework of blue economy. So if we consider blue carbon, it's very interesting that it's added another layer of pressure in the overall cost. Like we know that it's promoted as climate friendly solutions and also restricted access to some of the coastal and coastal vegetation or coastal ecosystem with limited recognition of the rights of the users. I should say the rights of the small scale fishers and livelihoods. So as a result, these conservation and climate mitigation agendas increasingly overlap and intensifying exclusion of these small scale resource users or small scale fishers on the ground, because they have the connection with this system and their livelihood depends on this coastal ecosystem, and this helps for them as a shelter or buffer zone, and sometimes some cultural and traditional values are also connected with this particular aquatic ecosystem. And also, I'm raising another issues like the visible and invisible users in a way that we know that we don't know. We know that we don't know who are the users of this particular ecosystem. Like for conservation, if you design a compensation plan or some of the ration for the users, we have no database for these users that who are going to fish where, who are the users of this particular aquatic ecosystem or coastal ecosystem, because it's very wide and it's very difficult to have an accountability of the particular users who are using these resources. So if you don't know who are the users, it's quite tough to manage the whole system. And 3 to 5 million people, suppose, depend on the Sundarbans. So Sundarban is a wide one sharing with other countries. So to make a conservation plan, we have to know the users as well. So that one of the another issue I wanted to raise in this webinar. Okay, so we went to another uh, research we conducted with the resource users. So there were some of that's in the southeast coast. Like we asked about their perceptions about this whole growth, and we used a methodological Q methodology that actually revealed three prominent clusters of opinion among these smaller scale fishers. First one is the injustice for growth. That means that they prioritize the land, livelihood, and local interest. That have strong disagreement with these mega projects or this growth will alleviate their poverty, though it's a national economic goals that overshadow the local needs. Then development within bounds, which advocates for sustainable development that actually balances economic growth with environmental and social responsibility. And final one is the just compensation and safety. Our stakeholders emphasize the need for fair, equitable compensation, risk management, and safeguarding livelihoods as part of the whole development process. In addition to the three cluster of opinion, the study identified some key points of consensus among small-scale fishers or small-scale users, including the prioritize to protect their local interest, concern about displacement, dispossession, and livelihood damage. Participants also provided valuable recommendations for addressing these issues, focusing on risk management, apart from risk management, benefit sharing, and ensuring a just transformation that supports actually equitable development. So uh, from this point, we try to do another research, which is a part of a handbook for the blue economy. That is there a safe space for these small scale fishers, or is there a viable space for these small scale resource users within the whole blue transition or the whole blue parties? So this framework, I try to concentrate on two issues and two instruments. Let's go a bit deeper. Like in the left quarter, you can see that blue economy risks and injustices has been some of the actions like protest or blue resistance movement sometimes create some of the mitigation and small scale fisheries resilience that can bring them to the safest space for these blue parties. As an outcome, the resilience can bring them, can lead them to the safest space. And sometimes some ocean equity and sustainability dimensions, what we discussed earlier, that considering equity and sustainability principles within the framework can ensure some of the rights and equity for small scale fishers as an outcome. So that can also bring them to the safest space. And the knowledge and transdisciplinary practice, as the host mentioned earlier, the transdisciplinarity. So action-oriented transdisciplinary research that can bring some of the sustainability in blue economy development, which creates some safe space for blue economy for the smaller scale fishers. And the last one in the issues is like smaller scale fisheries guiding principle. There are some guiding principles like um, FAO smaller scale fishers guidelines and even convention of biodiversity or some other space where they talk about the rights of small scale fishers. So the national policy should update in such a way that actually adopt the international guidelines for small scale fisheries that can create some of the outcome like good governance for small scale fisheries, which ultimately can lead to the safe space. So the point I want to connect that what is good governance actually. So I try to do another research using the governance framework inspired by women, which is interactive governance. So this interactive governance framework is important because smaller scale fisheries is not a sector, it's a social ecological system actually. So the diversity, complexity, dynamics and scale are very high for this particular small scale fisheries system, and types of governance or the order of governance creates the issues of how governable the small scale fisheries are. So to do so, I particularly focused on three orders: first order, second order, and meta order of this governance order, interactive governance framework. Inspired by Saint Gentot article in 2022, I tried to check the blue justice across three governance orders. The first one is actually the third order, that's the norms, talks about norms and principles mostly. That which justice principles are foundational for the governance systems? Do they recognize or ignore the rights, needs, and interests of small scale fisheries? So I checked with the case. I'm talking about the Mahashkali case in the southeast part. The development and implementation of mega project establishment, principles, norms, and objectives in a small island that shapes governance in three orders. Because the third order actually shapes the overall governance framework because that's the image. That's the image of the central government. Sorry. The second order talks about the institutions and rules. What institutional supports or characteristics does the governance system have? Are those actually supportive or discriminatory to the smaller scale fisheries? And the first one is the daily, day-to-day actions, like how do power relations affect smaller scale fisheries on a daily basis? Are interactions among stakeholders supportive or discriminatory for them? So these three questions in each order shapes the overall final concluding discussions, like try to find some pathways for this transition. And this just and equitable blue transition depends on overall consistent equity oriented or justice oriented governance across these three orders: the meta orders, second orders, the first order. In the meta order channel challenge revealed that national blue economy plans often prioritize economic growth over local concerns, sidelining the principles of equity and justice. And in the second order, you can find that there are some institutional gaps, such as the inadequate social impact assessment or environmental impact assessment, or some poor compensation mechanism who has been displaced or dispossessed, so have left the smallest fishers vulnerable to displacement or even the livelihood loss. And in the first order, you can see that the consequences are concrete, like communities face dispossession, they lost their access to fishing grounds, they lost their income, and ecosystem damage, and overall weakened social network are contributing to the further marginalization of these small scale fisheries. So there are some justice or equity oriented pathways at the meta order, including the equity centered blue economy planning, social knowledge integration, and some of the experiences like real world lab or adaptive learning. And in the second order pathways, emphasizing building a just institutional framework through actually participatory monitoring, conflict mediation, and adherence to international equity guidelines. In the first order pathways, focus on capacity building, empowerment, and resilience for small scale fishers, including advocacy skills, alternative livelihoods, or even the community managed initiatives. So some of the example in the first order may be the blue resistance movement, which has been found successful in some of the cases, and some other projects like No Crisis, there's an international project, worked on the women in this particular island to build up their resilience through artwork. That was important. And even the ocean defenders who are actually working to advocate, creating the defenders of ocean or coast particularly. So they are also contributing to build up the advocacy skills or even the negotiating skills for the smaller scale fishers. So overall, in the meta order, the system should be, or the principles should be equity or justice centered. And even there is an example of community of practice on blue economy governance. So how can a community of practice looks like? In my one of the articles, I tried to brief on that, like community of practice on blue governance or blue economy governance is a group of people who share a concern or passion and learn from each other through actually regular interactions. In the context of blue transition, this COP-BG or the community of practice on blue governance can play a crucial role because they can share their knowledge and build up capacity. And sometimes it serves as a platform to share for sharing experiences, the lesson learned, and best practices in sustainable ocean and marine resource management. The members can exchange innovative strategies to tackle challenges like pollution, climate change impacts, overfishing, so and bridging the policy gaps, policy and practices like the policymakers can work together with the practitioners, ensuring that these blue transition policies are grounded based on the realities, the practical realities. This actually reduces the policy implementation gap, which is common in emerging blue economy initiatives. Also, promoting collaborative innovation communities foster collaborative problem solving across sectors. Like this COP-BG can stimulate some joint projects like developing low carbon shipping technologies or ocean-based renewable energy solutions. So through enhancing the awareness and advocacy, a strong COP can raise awareness of blue transition challenges, helping stakeholders understand their environmental, social, and economic trade-offs. This advocacy can mobilize resources and support for sustainable marine initiatives. Also supporting a institutional approach like a bit of funding to this COP-BG and to build up their capacity on understanding the shared understanding. Also, Blue Economy Cell, which is led by the Prime Minister Office or a separate ministry, can be connected with this COP-BG, and so some of the countries are using Blue Economy Accelerator that implement practical solutions at different scale. So this is a model, this is a hypothetical model actually, which can work to move, because as long as the blue economy is a policy document now, so it can be one of the initiative which can be adopted by the central government to have some sustainable and equitable blue economy or blue transition in Bangladesh. The hope spot is that, or the bright spot is that there are a lot of acts like legal and policy frameworks which are available and which particularly talks about small scale fisheries. So that's promising. That's promising, but the challenge remains in the field level, like the enforcement. The enforcement is important because if you have enough policy, it is not enough, because you know that vulnerability to viability is not a unidirectional things. That the vulnerability to viability can be the viability to vulnerability again. So that's why my final recommendation is something like that. We have to have blue transition is not just about adaptation, but transforming the vulnerability into viability. It's actually having the consideration of the equitable and inclusive governance, because it's crucial to ensure that policies are grounded in equity and justice, participation, and the recognition and of the local rights are also important. So that's the concluding remarks. Like you don't have a one size fit for all, like a quick solution maybe, but the central order or central government or the meta order should have the image of equity and justice centered principles, which can be inclusive, which can ensure some equitable or inclusive governance for the whole transition of the blue parties or blue things like blue economy, blue growth, or ocean economy even. I want to thank some of the partners like ZMT, the Lebanese Center for Tropical Marine Research, where I completed my PhD, University of Bremen, Maroom and Glomar, the network, University of Liberal Arts Bangladesh, IPSHA, a local NGO in Bangladesh, TBTI, a small-scale fisheries network, B2B, No Crisis, or even the FishNet project, which I am currently engaged with, and many more students and also collaborators who helped me to collect the pictures, information, and everything. Thank you very much. I'm open for any discussion or question.
Thank you very much as well. Um, uh, I mean, this is wonderful. I mean, the length and the breadth of issues that you covered is, significant. And particularly in the context of Bangladesh, how things are moving not only on the ground but also at the policy level. Creation of the blue economy cell and other things. This is a really good example of how to kind of get into the depth of developments around blue economy, but also in consideration of justice and injustice issues. We don't have yet any questions from the audience, but I would kick off by asking you something as a first question. Um, there's a lot about blue justice, blue transition. You even mentioned blue transformation. Um, Questions of justice and injustice have always been there for ages and generations. So what's new in the context of blue economy? You know, because justice injustice issues prevailed over the ages as far as the communities have lived. So how do you distinguish between issues of justice during a blue economy era and before blue economy even? So is there something new, or is the same type of injustice that is lingering on into a new context?
Thanks for asking the interesting question, Pradeep. Actually, so the first, before going to the answer, I want to say that the blue economy is also not a new one. The blue economy is happening before it's coined up. Like someone said that it's a blue economy in 2012, like Pauli or someone in 2010. So does it mean that before that there were no blue economy? Actually, there were blue growth or blue economy happening maybe 4 or 5 decades back. There also development are happening. So every development has some negative impacts. So that means that the negative impacts are going towards the weaker parties. So that's the injustice or inequities happening. So you cannot define, okay, this is blue economy injustice and this is normal injustice. No, the injustice is actually the generational, and the blue economy initiatives are special focus on the sea as a development space. So it increases or widens the equity or injustice happening from before. So I will not separate the blue justice as a separate one, maybe the regulative idea or terminology. Sometimes it's easy for you to have some policies which actually consider these new terminologies. Like if you design a blue economy policy, you have to consider blue justice. So if you have to consider blue justice, you have to consider the overall justice framework. Like blue justice is not a new type of justice. It can be consist of recognitional, procedural, or contextual injustice. So that's the issues. Like we may note it with a different terminology, but it doesn't mean that it's happening a new types of injustice. It's the generational injustice happening and continuing.
Yeah, but the speed and the at which issues of injustice might emerge, may be accelerated through these activities, because uh, in the context of blue economy, one is also looking at the intensity of these activities. Yes, coastal development has been there for again, for a number of decades. So one is looking at how justice injustices can rapidly kind of emerge and persist because of the intensity of the activities that are taking place. So and it all the more becomes difficult to respond to because of the intensity and because of the power with which it comes in. New actors coming in and doing these activities rather than not. So yeah, I agree. With your conceptualization. Um, it's not a question, but it is a comment um, from Mundus Maris. I think Cornelia is on the other end. Um, we should not talk much about sustainability, given that both natural resources and ecosystems and social systems are badly eroded. We do not want to sustain this. Focus on regenerative economies. Is a comment. So, do you have any response to that, or do you like to reflect on the
Yeah,
regenerative economics aspect?
not particularly actually, because I found that these terminologies or these concepts are closely connected. Sometimes you have to you have to consider the pillars together. Otherwise, you cannot actually address the whole issue. That's the concept of interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary. Because in one of the research, I found that apart from the three pillars of sustainability, they considered governance as a fourth pillar. So it means that they are considering governance as a fourth pillar because social sustainability, economic sustainability, or even the environmental sustainability, they are not complementing each other if you don't have a good governance as well. So I only want to say that these concepts are closely connected, and if you go with a system, you need to actually talk about a lot of issues, not like a particular part of a whole system. So that's the challenge, like seeing it from the different disciplinary things or seeing it from the different actors' point of view. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is from Nabia from Waterloo. Nabia is saying, thank you, Dr. Joel, for an insightful and thought-provoking presentation. How can safe spaces be protected from gradual erosion through incremental policy changes and project approvals?
Yeah. So if I reflect, thanks Navia for watching this. And if I reflect a bit, like in the fourth quarter, in the lower part, we saw that okay, updating national policies based on the international guidelines. I said that it means that when the policies are changing, or the international commitments or agreements are changing. So you need to reshuffle your policies to ensure the safety for the small scale fishers. So that actually means that the decision makers image, like whether they're considering the interest of small scale fishers, if they are considering the interest of weaker parties, it is not a hard job to consider or comply those in the principles or in the image of the national policies. So I argue that it completely depends on the mindset of the decision makers that, okay, to save the smaller scale fisheries sector or to save the system, whole social ecological system of small scale fisheries, my policies should reflect which can ensure some of the safest spaces for them. So I'll again raise my question for the meta order, like the decision makers who are thinking it and their image are considering the equity principles or justice principle.
Yeah, a lot more questions flowing in. I'll go to Saria question. Saria is asking, great presentation, Dr. Joel. Some development projects I reviewed in Bangladesh included equity considerations, but lightly. Findings showed that large projects empowering fishermen have been implemented over the last 20 to 30 years, but their situation remains largely unchanged. Do you think the government truly aims for these transformative changes, or are they hesitant to delegate power to marginalized communities?
Thanks, Sharier. So the issue is that when Japan invested in the particular part of Southeast Coast, like they did the environmental impact assessment, and JICA has some specific guidelines for that. So later, some of the civil society raised question about the information they provided in the impact assessment report. That means that there is a big allegation that reports are not authentic sometimes. So it means that when you are implementing and following international guidelines, but your image is saying something else, like doing something for something. So that means that you are not actually trying to consider the interest of smaller scale features. Or sometimes you are not giving the authority to the coastal marginalized people. So that means that raises the question is that blue economy for whom? Blue economy for the stronger parties that who are elite capture or the profit seeker. So that doesn't help to have a sustainable system. I agree completely. I do agree with your point of view that whether the central government is still trying to have the equitable blue economy or it's a mere blue growth or industrialization. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Um, the next question is by PRC Debroy, I think from IIT Kharagpur. PRC is, oh no, Sifri in Kharagpur. How about inclusion of inland fisheries, inland waterways, and inland fisheries in the blue economy framework? Has this been considered in Bangladesh? I mean, in
Yeah.
blue economy discussions, where is the place and what is the place of inland fisheries?
Thank you very much. That's an important issue actually. So as long as the definition says that the economy which actually based on the coast or marine things, but still inland fisheries is very important in 2 points from my side. One is that the fishers sometimes are playing a dual role, like they are also inland fishers and even sometimes going towards the sea. It doesn't mean that if they go to inland, they don't go to sea. That's not the case. So it's when you have a registration system, so you need to consider the inland fisheries as well, because some of the inland fisheries are very near to the coast even. And also the when you are considering the stakeholders, that means the policymakers, there is no truly separate. Sometimes there are Department of Fisheries Marine, and sometimes there are Department of Fisheries, but the overall system or the rules and regulations are coming from the top position. So inland fisheries are also contributing somewhere to the blue economy, because when you are considering the alternate livelihood, it doesn't mean that you are considering another different livelihood than the fishing. So you can go to inland fishing sometimes if you don't have access to the sea during ban period or other thing. So that's the complementary one. You cannot separate completely the inland fisheries from the blue economy. From my point of view, I say that inland fisheries are also complementing the blue economy. Thank you.
Uh, Are there ways, in which they might be contradicting sometimes, or it is just a complementary relationship?
I personally find it's a complementary relation, because the contradiction means sometimes I heard from the field level that when you have a ban period, it means that you are not going to sea. But when you have a permission to go to the river, sometimes you are taking the chances that to go to the sea from the river. So it sometimes contradicts within the communities that okay, if you don't have a permission to go in the freshwater fisheries event, so we can check that okay, no one is going for fishing. But if you have a permission to go to freshwater, then you can easily go to the marine water even sometimes, or coastal water. So these are a bit of conflicting situation, but mostly or largely it is actually complementing. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that is, I think it's a good point to note, because there are many dynamics that might be emerging between the marine and inland and coastal fisheries, given how things are changing, and therefore there probably is a chance to extend the injustices on the coast towards more inland, sectors. I'm just conjecturing here, but that's how things progress. So these linkages could move in terms of not only complementarities, but also extend the injustices, inward into the inland fisheries. So just a thought for more discussion. Um, Sanjita is asking, did your research find that women in fishing communities experience blue economy transformations differently, and if so, how? I think it's a very good question, in terms of are different groups of people experiencing blue economy impacts differently.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Sabrina. It's an important question. Actually, the women's contribution in blue economy, there are some articles. Maybe I'll share the links later. So that's interesting that in India as well, there were some research. In my research, I found that the women's involvement in fishing is actually remaining the same in like post-harvesting activities. They contribute sometimes. So on the displacement happened in particularly southeast coast, I found that women are also losing their mobility, social network, and even some of the homestead income. So that was a great burden for them in a negative way. So that's why the training and other facilities are focusing on women particularly. So that are the alternative livelihood options, or creating some of the resilience among women by some of the NGOs. There were no particular plan from government side to address the issues of women, but the scenarios should be in other way, like getting benefit from the blue economy for the women as a blue transformation process. So I'm still waiting to have some of the impacts of these operational things which are in the middle of the stage. Maybe more research can answer your question rightly, that whether they're getting any benefit or the transformation is positive for them or not. But they're experiencing some of the negative impacts.
Yeah, I mean, they may be, depending on the context, I'm not particularly aware of Bangladesh, but other places, the the age-old debate around land ownership and other things comes as a stark reality within the blue economy context. Because if you're talking about compensation and other kinds of things, landlessness, most of these lands are not owned by any of these displaced people. So uh, and women are particularly disadvantaged because of the ownership patterns that we know that exist in most of this South Asia coast. So uh, really a good question to kind of follow further to see not only women but are other disadvantaged groups. Uh, is there a differential impact on these disadvantaged groups, social groups on the coast itself? So that question was by Sanjida, and this question is by Sabrina, and Sabrina is asking a question about your research findings. In your view, what practical steps can be taken to reduce these negative impacts or injustices to local fisher communities in the short term? Um, so what
Yeah.
can be immediately done to mitigate or to respond to some of these injustices or impacts?
Yeah, thanks for raising another important issues as well. So I have to start a bit from the back, like uh, in the national level, if you have a clear definition of a smaller scale fishers, that's important because you are designing a compensation plan or even some of the management strategies. You need to know who are the actual fishers. So that remains a questions in the field level or when we go to field and ask the people, because sometimes if you have a registration card it's easy to enumerate and make it accountable for who are the actual features are actually impacted by this whole activity. So then you can design some project. Apart from that, when you are talking about blue economy policy making, you need to consider some of the international guidelines, like as I mentioned, like FAO small scale fisheries guideline. It has everything like what you have to do for the development project, what you have to do with the consideration of the local rights and everything. So it depends on that how you are shaping your policies. So if you shape your policies based on some of the aid provided by the international experts, it becomes a bit easier, but it doesn't solve the whole problem because Pratip also mentioned that the context can vary from one to another. So in some cases, if you find who are the impacted people, then there might be some compensation scheme initially because you are considering the economic growth as a priority. Second one is that the project should not hamper the local rights. So you have accountability that whether it is national investor or international investors or even some other initiatives like conservation, it need to have the priority for the weaker parties like small scale feature. So I personally emphasize on the policy forming rather than field project activities or interventions. The policy can guide you to the second order and the first order to have a good institution and the daily interaction.
Yeah, very true. Um, I don't see any more questions. I think we have a few more minutes left, but we'll bring it to an end. Really great presentation and a topic that we can keep debating for a few more hours even. But as we always say, this is just the beginning of uh, discussion on a particular issue that is raised on this particular platform. Um, and these debates continue into other forums and other levels altogether. So thank you once again, Joel, for making that fascinating presentation and opening up many new ways of thinking and debating and responding to some of the blue economy and interrelated injustice justice issues. Um, and thank you to the audience, for asking those great questions and staying engaged, over the last 1 hour or so. This was our last V2V thematic webinar series talk for 2025. I would like to invite all of you to the 2026 series, where we are going to feature every month a case study, B2B case study that we have been researching in different countries in Africa and Asia. So we're going to feature a case study every month as part of our B2B thematic webinar series. And in January, we are going to have a case study from Ghana in West Africa, talking about the notion of vulnerability to viability. Of course, as I said, it's both ways. As vulnerable communities have a chance to move towards viability, very viable communities can revert back towards, so, and what is the transition process? So we'll have case studies presented in the 2026 series of B2B thematic webinars. Please join us, in 2026. I wish all of you happy holidays and a peaceful and prosperous New Year 2026 to all of you. So see you again in the new year. And thank you once again to our speaker and the audience. Thank you very
Thanks to
much.
BTV and thanks to everyone.